Thank you, Beth. Thank you, everyone, for coming. So my name is Kelvin. I'm now teaching. I'm a faculty with one of the universities, a public university in Singapore. So I'm going to present a topic on identifying difficulties with cultural evaluation of the environment. Now, I understand that most of you are not familiar with environmental valuation. So this topic is related to that. So just to let you know why this topic is important, so, okay, apologize for the wordiness, but just to share with you in short that, well, valuation as a whole has been identified as important when it comes to environmental management, particularly the aspect of what we call cultural valuation. So various United Nations documents such as the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment have placed importance on cultural valuation. Now, just to give you a quick background about what valuation is about, it's about basically, stating how much you're willing to pay in terms of dollars and cents to protect the environment, whether it's a particular species, whether it's a tree, or so on and so forth, or maybe a locale, or such as nature reserve. So with that, the United Nations has highlighted the importance of cultural valuation. So when it comes to valuing the environment from a cultural angle, we are talking about valuing from the aesthetics point of view, also with respect to the particular group of people's cultural identity. And not just that, but also a sense of home and the spiritual experience. And also there's some of the practical aspects such as how much tourism benefits can bring to maybe the country or maybe to that particular state, and also the recreational benefits. And there has been an increasing trend for governments worldwide to apply cultural valuation, such as the UK and such as Australia. And among the academic community have been arguments about for the non-economic motives underlying valuation. So such academics, they are arguing against taking what you call a value neutral position, whereby they just say that it's impossible to take to discount where your preferences come from, because it's about valuation is about expressing your preferences in terms of dollars and cents. So these scholars are saying that we should go and find out what these preferences are, where they come from, the causes. All right, and so therefore some scholars like Martin Lopez et al. Has talked about psychological factors in what he calls a contingent valuation, which is a particular method of valuation. Other scholars have talked about valuation not just with respect to the individual's valuation, like how much he or she is willing to pay, but how much society as a whole is willing to pay. So there's just some quick background about cultural valuation. Now, my argument is that, when it comes to cultural valuation, I would argue that there is a conflation of concepts in terms of understanding what cultural valuation is. And not just that, there are also other criticisms about cultural valuation, which can be grouped into the methodological, theoretical, and the operationalization aspect. So I will go that quickly into detail. So I'll first talk about how culture works in environmental management. So I shared with you a quick background just now about cultural valuation. So now just to hone in further, what is the assumption behind cultural valuation? The assumption, the premise is that we look at ecosystems as providing benefits, whether in terms of natural resources or some sense of recreation or pleasure to the community as a whole, and not just to isolated individuals or isolated groups of people. This is because factors that affect how a community manages an ecosystem can be different from those that affect individuals' behaviors. So basically, this is saying that the factors that influence how a community manages an ecosystem can be different from those factors that influences how an individual would do so. And so therefore, some scholars have said that we should take a community-based valuation approach, whereby this is supposed to be deliberative, that we can get people in a community to discuss about how important this environment or this particular species is, because it provides benefits to community as a whole, not just to isolated individuals or groups. And so therefore, particularly with respect to frameworks such as what you call the ecosystem services framework, which I will not go into it, but suffice to say that, like I said earlier, some scholars have talked about willingness to pay, not from an individual level, but from a societal level. Now, how it's done is that there requires some constant social negotiation among the individuals in the community about what these cultural values are. And these cultural values, they do not occur on their own. They interact, they are influenced, and they also influence the environment they're in, the natural environment, the landscapes, all right, and also the global influences. And this is at odds with how neoclassical economists, they conceptualize valuation as being given, stable, and rather similar across individuals, all right? So they don't question where individuals' preferences come from. They just take it as given, all right? And some scholars for cultural valuation, they have argued against, treating the individual as the unit of analysis, all right? We should treat society as a unit analysis instead. So they argue against this assumption of atomism. And other scholars who promote cultural valuation, they recognize that not all individuals in a cultural group share the same social cultural values, and this can lead to conflict among the stakeholders in the community. And therefore, that's why you require deliberation, community-based deliberation. So with that, I've come to the part about conflation of concepts that I mentioned just now. Scholars such as Scholte et al. Have distinguished between social cultural values against what other scholars would term as cultural ecosystem services. Now, what is the difference between the two? So this is quite a new and recent field, but suffice to say that what I can tease out is that social cultural values entails outlining, measuring the benefits from ecosystems, not just from the immaterial angle, such as a sense of place or identity, but also from the material angle. This is against cultural ecosystem services, whereby they measure or they value the environment from a non-material aspect, such as a spirituality, such as a sense of place. And how scholars for social cultural values, how they define it is in terms of the importance that people as individuals, as a group, assign to what you call bundles or ecosystem services or package of benefits that the environment provides to this group. And this is different from cultural ecosystem services that the United Nations defines as cultural services. All right. Now, social cultural values, they are influenced by terrestrial factors such as a landscape ecosystem, and also the people living in this particular locale, this environment, and the interaction between nature and human beings. This is in contrast with cultural ecosystem services, whereby it's influenced basically by the immaterial cultural services and their values. So the intangible aspect. And how social cultural values, how you collect data can be a mix of qualitative or quantitative, either or. And for cultural ecosystem services, however, this tends to be qualitative, because it's difficult to present abstract concepts such as a sense of identity, or using statements or pictures that really quantify or they really measure what is identity, what's the strength of identity, for example. So how this is applied social cultural values, I will go through this very quickly. Is that when it comes to social cultural values in application in real life, people talk about what is the symbolic value that the environment has. What kind of symbolic value that people vest with the environment, and this belongs to the what you call the non-economic values of ecosystems, and this requires human and nature interaction, that recognition, because aesthetics and spiritual values, for example, are not solely in terms of individual preferences such as artistic taste or choice of religion, but they are socially shared. These cultural values, they don't come just for individuals, isolated individuals, but they are socially shared. Frequently intersubjective means that they must constantly negotiate with one another, these individuals, and they're outcome of historical processes in shared cultures. That means to say they're outcomes of your ancestors' living experience through how many generations over time. And so some scholars say that we should not treat nature as a commodity, but as something more than that. All right, we cannot see ourselves as apart from nature, just as consumers or engineers. All right, and therefore, we have to recognize that the values that we have towards the environment, they are not exogenous, they are actually endogenous to us, because we are all part of the environment. All right, such as, so some scholars have raised the example of a Native American as an example, as an illustration of this aspect. Now, this is the part of the conflation that I have just briefly whooshed through. So now I go to the methodological problems. So cultural valuation, it seems all nice and good, but what are some problems in real life? One is that when it comes to methodology, ecosystem services, all right, which uses cultural valuation, it has only stopped at core concepts and approaches. It could not go beyond towards, say, measurement, all right, quantification, or even monetization, because there's problems with operationalization of non-material benefits. Like how can you operationalize non-material benefit? You need a measurement, all right? So which is impossible because it's an abstract concept, like sense of identity, aesthetics. How do you measure that? Okay. And there's also, when it comes to measuring the value of an environment, we need to distinguish between, a change in environment caused by human beings, social causes, and caused by nature. All right. So this is very hard to disentangle in real life. And also that there's a lack of participatory methods to identify and catalog priority ecosystem services. All right. So there's a lack of methods to document, to discuss this. So some scholars, when it comes to methodology, they have suggested that we should decide against assuming the individual as a unit analysis, and we should improve all these group decision-making procedures or develop new procedures that force people to explicitly quantify their value judgments or encourage them to take into account the welfare of who is the real owner of the natural resource. Okay. And then there are theoretical problems that some scholars have said that cultural valuation, yes, we talk about abstract concepts and values, but then ultimately it's all about the outcomes that the environment can give us. All right, the outcomes, whether in terms of quantity of natural resources or in terms of what you get from environment, what leads to the outcome, that process is not important. Okay. But other scholars would go against that and say that it's not just about the outcome, but the process is very important. All right. For example, how do groups arrive at a particular monetary value for the environment? All right. We call that procedural rationality, whereby many people have different views of the environment. So of course they will express their importance about the environment in different ways. All right, to various maybe values. All right, monetary values. And also, when you look at willingness to pay, how much you're willing to pay is not just about the dollars and cents that reflects, the material aspect can get from environments. Sometimes it's a reflection of the importance they place on the environment. So basically, the higher the value they're willing to pay, you would say that you treat the environment as more important. That is your expression. All right. So it's not exactly you should take that monetary value very seriously. All right. It's just an ordinal measure. So because of all this, so therefore, scholars such as Gaudi have said that we need to pay attention to both the process and the outcome, all right? Not just the outcome that the rational actor model would focus on. Okay? And finally, operationalization problems. This is my last slide. So now when it comes to evaluating culture, if you want to express it in terms of money, right, the fungibility of culture, or express culture in a certain tangible unit of measurement, there is a problem because when you want to study the causes that influence cultural values, all right, it includes both aesthetics, for example, and also the deontological, or what you call the spiritual foundations of cultural benefits, all right? So maybe your religion influences how you would value this plot of land, all right? And when it comes to culture, they also have problems across disciplines, all right? So for example, economics, they treat culture as a special category of commodities that say, influence, all right, that helps with your mind, all right, gives you knowledge. But anthropology would treat culture as a system of understandings through which social life occurs, through which social life is transacted, all right? And so therefore, when it comes to treating benefits from ecosystems, and we term it as services that ecosystem provides, some people would have difficulty understanding nature as a service provider, all right? Because theory-wise, those theories that use the ecosystem service framework, they neglect how this whole life experiences of communities come about. All right, they neglect that there is a human nature interaction, and also in practice, all right, not all people treat the natural environment as just a service provider, as just providing natural resources to you. And so therefore, some scholars like Sansi have said that we should maybe move away from willingness to pay as a basis for reason, as a basis for placing importance on environment, and use other ways to make decisions about environment, such as use of judgment, or what he calls the reasons instead. So with that, my conclusion is that I've shown you a bit about, suggested that there is some importance about the non-economic motives behind environmental valuation, that people still talk about culture, but there is a conflation of concepts. And when it comes to problems, methodologically, it remains stuck at conceptual level, cannot move beyond that. Theoretically, there is the preeminence of the consequentialist position, all right, that the rational actor model holds that influences environmental valuation, and operationally, it's very hard to quantify, let alone monetize the benefits that the environment gives to people from the cultural angle. So with that, that's it. Thank you.